Hello, everybody. It's time for the final 2024 election recap. We've got the last five states. It's going to be Tennessee, Maryland, Wyoming, Minnesota, but we're going to start here in the Golden State, California. They took the longest, but I think everything is finally in, and it's a big state, so let's get into it. We've got Kamala Harris winning the state by 20 points. She's at 58.5, Trump at 38.3. That's certainly a big improvement for Trump from 4 years ago. It's also Harris's home state, but it did not appear that she really got any kind of a bounce. Kennedy and Stein are both over 1% here. Now, the other big race here is going to be U.S. Senate. And as expected, Adam Schiff won by way over 10 points. It was actually close to 18, so that's actually not a horrible margin there for Steve Garvey, who got over 41, Schiff at about 59. And here's Schiff running just slightly ahead of Harris, and Garvey running a few points ahead of Trump. So anything under 20 points statewide for a Republican, I'm going to say that's not a terrible night. Now, let's look at the U.S. House, and this is what took forever. We've got 52 seats here. There's some open seats. There's some flips. It looks like Democrats are going to hold 43 of these seats and Republicans just 9. So that's a pretty big imbalance. But what are some of the notable districts? Well, in the 9th, incumbent Democrat Josh Harder was able to hold on by under a 4-point margin. In the 13th, this was the final race to be called out of all 435. Adam Gray, the Democrat, knocks off the incumbent Republican John Duarte by under 1/10 of a point. I think this race is notable not just because it was the last one to be called, but because for at least 2 or 3 weeks, the Republican held the lead there. It was narrow, but eventually that finally flipped toward the very end. So I think a lot of people are frustrated just by the initial length of the counting, but then for the result to flip way after the fact, regardless of which side you're on, I think a lot of people find that to be very unsatisfying. But moving on, we've got the 27th district, and George Whitesides was able to take down incumbent Republican Mike Garcia. It was low single digits, but I thought that one was close to an upset. So Garcia ran against Christy Smith 3 times, but the person to take him out is going to be Whitesides. Next, down in the 41st, Ken Calvert held on only by 3 points over Will Rollins. And in the 45th, perhaps another upset, Derek Tran defeated incumbent Republican Michelle Steele by less than a quarter point. And then in the 47th, that's the seat held by outgoing Katie Porter. It was close, but David Min defeated Scott Baugh by about 3 points. The 49th with Mike Levin, that was also fairly close. But overall, Dems with 3 flips here in this state. It's kind of a regression from the last midterm election where Republicans were the ones with the success here. So there is no governor's election here. That's in 2 years. But in state government, it's going to be an easy trifecta here for the Dems. In the state Senate, it's 30 Dems, 10 reps. The Assembly is 60-19. I think Republicans did make 2 gains in the Assembly and 1 in the Senate, but it's not enough to break up the supermajority. Now let's go down to the ballot measures. We've got a bunch of them. The first one is a $10 billion bond to repair K-12 schools and community colleges. Prop 3 would amend the state constitution to reflect existing laws on Californians' right to marry, regardless of their sex or race. Another easy pass there was 63. Next, it's another $10 billion bond to pay for wildlife prevention, safe drinking water, and protection against the effects of climate change. Voters there supported and passed this with 60%. The next one would change the approval requirement for issuing local infrastructure bonds, lowering it from a 2/3 supermajority to 55%. Ironically, that one failed with no getting 55%. Prop 6 was controversial. It would remove a provision that lets prisons and jails force inmates to work. Looks like they're going to keep that there. No got 53%. Then we've got an even more contentious one, raising the minimum wage. They would immediately raise it to 17 an hour and then 18 an hour at the beginning of January. That's for workplaces with 26 or more employees. For smaller businesses, it would be a 1-year delay. It's a blue state. They tend to support these kinds of things as they've done in the past, and we don't often see raising the minimum wage failing. However, it did not pass this time. It got 50.7% that said, no, I think we've had enough of that. Next, Prop 33 would give local governments more authority to enact rent control by repealing the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, a state law that limits this power. They decided against that. 60% said we're going to keep it. The next prop would require 98% of the revenues from a federal prescription drug discount program to be used on direct patient care. Very contentious one there as well. It did pass, but with only 51%. Prop 35 would make permanent a state tax on health insurance plans and would use that revenue to fund Medi-Cal services. Not much contention there. It passed with 68%. Also passing with the same level of support. It's increasing sentences for drug and theft crimes. It would allow for felony charges for certain drug and theft crimes if the defendant has 2 prior convictions for these offenses. So they are going to get a little bit tougher on crime there. And then we've got 2 recalls. One for the Alameda County DA. That was a success with 63%. And finally, the recall there for Oakland Mayor. That also passed, and it wasn't really close. A yes got 61%. 1%. Finally, at the very bottom, we've got the special U.S. Senate election to fill the remainder of the time of Dianne Feinstein, which expires in early January. We've got the DA in L.A. County. It looks like it's the end of the line for George Gascon. He was defeated. And finally, in San Francisco, incumbent London Breed has been defeated by Daniel Lurie. So it looks like they're going to go in a little bit different direction for their mayor there in San Francisco. And that wraps up California. Now let's go east and into the south. We've got Tennessee. And here for president, Donald Trump wins the state by just about a massive 30-point margin. It's definitely higher than he got in 2020. That's 64.2 to Harris's 34.5. Everybody else was under 1%. And you can see Trump winning almost every county in the state. Then we've got a race for U.S. Senate. And it's almost the same margin. Marsha Blackburn, the Republican, got 63.8. Gloria Johnson, who was part of the Tennessee 3 a couple years back, she got 34.2. So not a lot of difference there between president and Senate. But Blackburn was able to win one more county than Trump. No governor's race this year, but we've got 9 U.S. House seats, and none of them were close. Dems only have 1 of these seats. Republicans are going to have 8. I don't think it's a fair map, but none of these seats were within 10 points. So there's not really much to take a look at here. And in the state legislature, it's going to be a dominant Republican trifecta. Along with their governor, Bill Lee, in the state Senate, it's 27-6. And in the state House, it's 75-24. So that's it. There are no ballot measures on here. So we can move even further east, all the way to the coast, and take a look at Maryland. So at the top, it's a slam dunk here for Harris. She won the state by about 29 points, 63-34. But that is a reduced margin from 2020. Stein and Kennedy here with over 1%. Next, we've got a U.S. Senate race. And this was an open seat to replace Ben Cardin. It was expected to be much closer than the presidential election. Angela Alsobrooks won the seat, but she ran well behind Kamala Harris. She got under 55%. Former popular governor Larry Hogan got into the race at the last minute, and he did well for a Republican, but he still got under 43%. So Senate is completely different than governor, and if Larry Hogan can't even get it within 10 points in an open seat, there's no chance here anytime soon for the Republicans. But still, a 12-point margin is still way, way better than the presidential margin. Next in the House, we've got 8 seats. It's not a good map. Republicans are only going to have 1 seat here. Democrats 7. The closest one here is in the 6th. That was an open seat, and Neil Parrott ran again for the GOP, but he still lost by 6 points. Then we've got one ballot measure here, and this is about abortion, and it would guarantee access by adding language to the Constitution protecting the ability to make and effectuate decisions to prevent, continue, or end one's own pregnancy. Very easy pass there with 76%. The last thing we've got in this state is the mayor of Baltimore. Brandon Scott easily wins re-election with over 80%. Let's go from this deep blue state to a deep red state. We've got Wyoming, and here Trump again tops 70%. He's over 72 this time. Harris is at about 26, but she does claim 1 county in her 46-point loss. No governor's race, but we've got a Senate election, and the very popular John Barrasso wins re-election. This margin is even wider. Barrasso here tops a 50-point spread. He's at almost 76. The Democrat is over 24, but there is still always going to be that one stubbornly blue county. In the at-large U.S. House District, it's again a massive blowout here for Harriet Hageman at 71%. And remember, this is the old Liz Cheney seat from just a few years ago. But either way, Republicans continue to massively dominate in this state. In the legislature, it's an easy red trifecta. In the Senate, it's only 2 Dems to 29 Republicans. And in the House, it's 56-6. And the last thing in this state is going to be one ballot measure. This would make residential real property a separate class for property tax assessments. It would also enable the creation of an owner-occupied primary residence subcategory, which could be taxed at a different rate. That one might be more interesting than it sounds, but it did pass with 59%. So we've got one final state, and that's going to be Minnesota. And the winner here is Kamala Harris with 51.1, and Trump gets 46.9. So that is a narrower margin than 2020, but a wider margin than 2016. It's also Tim Walz's home state, but he did not really give Harris that much of a bounce here. All the other candidates are under 1%. So even though Trump lost, he did have success here. He improved on his total each time in the past 2 elections. Then we've got a U.S. Senate election, and as expected, Amy Klobuchar wins re-election to a 4th term. She got 56.3. Royce White got 40.5. So it's a blowout for Klobuchar, but it's technically also the narrowest of all of her Senate wins. Then in the House, we've got 8 districts, and it's going to be split. 4 Dems, 4 Republicans. No seats changed parties, and none of these were even under 13 points. So not much excitement there. Now in state government, it's still going to be Tim Walz as governor, and they don't show the breakdown here in the Senate and the House, but it's very close. The Democrats have a 1-seat majority in the Senate, and in the House, it's actually tied at 67-67. It's even possible it's not all completely settled just yet, but it really doesn't get much closer closer than that. As of now, it looks like the GOP has at least put an end to the Democratic trifecta, and we'll close it out here with a trust fund amendment and some Supreme Court races. So that's everything. We went through all 50 states. We covered president, Senate, governor, the U.S. House, the ballot measures, etc. There's always going to be a couple of things still outstanding, maybe even a couple of recounts, but after this month, the attention is going to start to shift toward the upcoming midterms in a couple of years. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed these recaps, so let me know in the comments. What are you taking a look at in these states? How about California? Do you think they took way too long to count their ballots? And maybe there's something down ballot that I missed. Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.